Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Hammer's Chat. It's Saturday and there's no Premier League football. I know. 75% of you are probably very angry about this fact, very annoyed. You don't want to international. You don't want to watch England play football. You're not watching Czech Republic versus Croatia, or not versus Croatia, Czech Republic or Croatia. You're not seeing those new signings play football. No, none of that. None of that. You only want Premier League football. You want morsels of West Ham. You want tidbits. And I'll tell you what, we got some tidbit for you today. It's a big old tidbit. It's a tad bit. Is that a thing? It's a tad bit, yeah? Big news about Declan Rice's contract situation. We spoke about it a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago, maybe more at this point. Honestly, time does not exist for me anymore. I am ethereal. But we spoke about it, right? We spoke about the idea of Declan Rice was unhappy at the 100 million valuation that the club had put on top of him. He felt like that was stifling a move away to a big club, his big move. And we got some updates on that today from two separate sources. There's a bit of clashing information in there, but I think we can maybe draw out a narrative. And we'll go through that in just a moment. But remember, it's the beginning of the month, which means patreon.com/Hammers Chat is the place to be. Link in the description below. Tons of extra videos from Gio and Gonzo. There's an extra video from me. Audio versions of all the videos from wonderful Rebecca. You can get them all. Patreon.com/Hammers Chat. Now is the best time to do it. You get charged when you join. And at the beginning of the month, so the earlier you do it, the more bang for your buck you get. Have a look. Just link in the description below. Now, we'll go to the first report. And this comes away of Graham Bailey at 90 Min. And it reads, as such, Declan Rice focused on West Ham, but has his sights on move in 2022. The bulk of the article reads, as such, Declan Rice is focused on this season with West Ham United, although 90 Min understands the player fully expects the campaign to be his last one at the London Stadium. I mean, we can all hope that we don't have to go back to that stadium, but that's a side note. Although, to be fair, I haven't been back, obviously, since the pandemic, but people who I've spoken to said it's been pretty good. We have been back, so maybe it's different. Maybe all we needed was a global pandemic to learn to love the fishbowl. Who knows? Who knows? West Ham have been considering offering Rice a new contract, even though his current deal runs until 2024, as his wages do not represent his position and stature within the club. We know he's been offered several contracts. We know he's been turning them down. His team have been turning them down. This isn't surprising. Obviously, big name player for the club, one of the most important players, one of the first names on the team sheet, and also captain when Noble's not on the pitch, which isn't going to happen after this season. So clearly an incredibly important player. And we know this. We know he's been offered contracts. Rice would be open to signing a new deal on the proviso that it included a release clause, which would allow him to leave the club if a fixed figure was met by a potential buyer. This is the important bit. However, 90 Min have learned that West Ham have a rule of not including release clauses in contracts, meaning a new deal is now unlikely. We now go over to Ekrem Connor, the journalist on Twitter. You've probably seen him around a lot. He's reported on tons of things over the summer, consistently for quite a while actually now. I keep seeing his name pop up, and he tweeted this. He reported this: West Ham United want to extend the contract to Declan Rice, who's on many teams' transfer lists, and add a release clause to his new contract of 120 million. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Conflicting reports there in terms of what West Ham want to do in terms of release clause. But I do think the release clause is the way out of this situation. I do think it's the answer, but it's something that has to be right for both parties, right? So Declan Rice getting a new contract makes sense. He's one of the biggest stars at the club. And in my opinion, his sale can set this club up to future success. It's a huge deal, a monumental moment in the future of the club, in the building of the club, pardon me. I really do believe that. I think if you sell him for 100 million, whatever it ends up being, all of a sudden you can reinvest that in a huge amount. We know we're struggling for finances. West Ham United are currently £125 million in debt. And it could be, according to Jim White's sources, so David Sullivan, it could be £175 million in debt by the next summer window. So we know we're struggling for money, and we know that's impacting transfers because we wanted a striker, and according to David Moyes himself, they were all too expensive. They're ones we wanted. Tammy Abraham was too expensive. So selling Declan Rice for 100 million could facilitate us actually progressing forward as a club, because whatever money we get for him, say let's use the 100 million figure for example, That's enough to go and buy his replacement, plus invest in other areas of the squad that we need to invest in. Striker, right? So I really do believe that Declan Rice's sale is the key to growing, is the key to West Ham's future. And keeping him at the club, in my opinion, is foolhardy, isn't the way forward with that. But Declan's people have clearly been frustrated by this 100 million figure that's being bandied around. So they're saying, we want a release clause in. And I think that's smart. And I think that's smart for both parties as well. Because if you're a club who are coming to try and buy Declan Rice and there's no release clause, then David Sullivan can just ask for whatever money he wants. And he can be as stubborn and difficult to deal with as possible. So if there's a release clause and he's being stubborn and difficult and they really want him, they can just pay the release clause and get the player. But equally, I think it's a smart idea for West Ham. Because if you're in a negotiation and they're saying 60 million, oh, we'll pay 60 million for Declan Rice, we'll pay 70 million for Declan Rice, but he has a 100 million release clause, you can just sit there and go, it's in contract, bruv. It says 100 million. You either pay the money or you don't. That's not my problem. You pay it or you don't. It's there. It's in writing. That's the price. Because that's what Grealish happened. That's what happened with Grealish. And this is the thing that's on everyone's minds, right? And why this 100 million figure, I think, gets banded around so frequently is Grealish obviously went to City for 100 million because the release clause in his contract at Villa was 100 million. But I understand from West Ham's perspective this idea of not wanting to include release clauses. I get it. I feel that way. You know, when I'm playing FIFA, Pro Evo, eFootball now, I guess, Football Manager, if I sell a player, then there's often something in the back of my mind that goes, I could have maybe got more for that. So I understand that instinct, because I'm sure David Sullivan has it too. I mean, transfer market like eBay, that guy, right? So he probably has the exact same emotions. So if he puts a clause in for, say, 100 million, and then someone pays 100 million, then he's probably going to go, I could have got 120. Could have got 110. We noticed, I remember an interview years ago in 2016, something like that, 2015, where Sullivan said something along the lines of, or someone speaking on behalf of Sullivan, I don't remember exactly, but the quote was essentially, if a club accepts your first offer, you've paid too much for the player, right? And it's that wheeler-dealer nature. And that's kind of why this idea of not including release clauses makes sense, because you hold all the cards then. In a negotiation, you hold every single card, because you can say, Man United come and they go 70 million. That doesn't restrict you to only saying, oh, the release clause is 80 million. You can say 100 million. You can say whatever you want, right? It means you get as much for the player as humanly possible. I understand that. But the way I look at it is this. It strengthens your negotiation position, because it means that you can just point to that figure. If it's high enough, you can just point to that figure. Now, obviously, if the release clause is 60, 70 million, then you're onto a loss here. And this is where the argument between Rice and David Sullivan are going to end up being, I think. But say it's 100 million, this release clause, you can then turn and go, well, it's 100 mil. You pay it or you don't. That's your choice. But it's in writing that it is 100 million pounds for Declan Rice. If you pay it, that's fine. Go wild. And so maybe that's what we're seeing here. These two conflicting reports, maybe they don't conflict. Maybe the original deals that were being put on the table, or West Ham are thinking about putting on the table, didn't include a release clause. Rice's people saying, we want a release clause. West Ham retort with, fine, it'll be 120 million. Knowing that that's too much, knowing that 100 million was too much, but it's what we would accept for Declan Rice. Maybe that's where this narrative thread we can pull exists. You know, maybe that's what we're saying here. But for me, I think it actually strengthens our position. But that's where it will balance out, right? Is how much that figure ends up being. Rice and Rice's people are obviously going to want it as low as possible, because they want to make that move happen. So it's not going to be important to them if it's 60 million. If it's 60 million, great. He gets to move to Manchester United. He gets to move to Chelsea. Good times. If it is 100 million, 120 million, maybe those things don't work out, but they work out best for West Ham. And that's where the balancing point is going to be. In my head, the biting point is probably in the 90 to 100 million pound range. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Let me know in the comment section below. I think that's where the biting point will end up being, a release clause of 90 to 100 million. And I think that works well for all parties. My concern at this point from a fan perspective is that this 100 million figure is being bandied around so often, and so for so many months at this point, because it really has been months, that if we get anything under 100 million, the fans will kick off. But I mean, look, Declan Rice is going to leave. I hate to say it. I don't want it to happen, but realistically, he is leaving, and realistically, it's the right thing for all parties involved for him to leave next summer. It's just a case of making sure we get the right price. 90 to 100 million, preferably 100 million, but 90 to 100 million makes sense. And it will allow David Sullivan to not look like the bad guy. Because right now in this situation, if Declan or Declan's people are agitating for a move and big clubs that Declan might want to move to are interested, your Cities, your Manchester Uniteds, your Chelseas are interested, and they're going, ooh, what's that Declan Rice? What are we saying? 70 million? Would that do it for you? And Declan and David Sullivan's sitting there like, 110. It's going to make him look like the bad guy. If there's something in contracts, in paper, on contract that says 100 mil, he's not the bad guy. You lot signed it. That's your fault. You know, it rephrases it. It reframes it. I hope that's how this plays out. Because like it said, Declan isn't really on the wages of a player of his stature should be, according to 90 Mins. I don't know what his current wages are. I wouldn't want to have that discussion necessarily, but we need to make sure he's as happy as possible because he is very important for the club this summer. And I resigned myself long ago. If you've watched the videos that I've been on, I resigned myself over a year ago that this summer or next summer were the ones he's leaving. And it seems to be playing out that it's going to be next summer. We'll see though. How do you feel? Let me know in the comment section down below. Come get involved. Like I said, international football's on at the moment, but you best believe the second normal football's back. Premier League football's back. We're going to be all over it. And until the meantime, keeping you up to date with the goings on at West Ham. Because stuff's always happening. Stuff is always happening, you know? There's just non-stop events. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Thank you for watching. Come on, you wines. And until next time, have a good one. See you later, everyone. Bye.